Adewale didn't see it coming. It was how Funk's laughter had grown softer, how her warmth turned chilly. It crept up toward him like the Harmattan wind, first gently, then biting. They were the world's golden couple, Lagos couple. Adewale, the successful businessman, charming and clad in tailored suits. Funk with grace holding the world together as a homemaker. But behind the high noble doors of their house in Lekki, a crack set the patter of gloom. "Whale," shouted Funk one evening from where she stood near the kitchen door, "you are late again." "Work." Adewale loosened the collar of his tie, oblivious all about him but for the brewing storm. "Ah, Funk. You know how it is. Deadlines. Clients don't wait." Funk's lips pressed tighter against each other, though she managed to smile. "Of course. Work." He didn't notice the keen edge that slipped through her tone. His phone buzzed. A quick glance, a typing back. Funk's eyes lingered on him. Was it another woman? The thought had been planted weeks ago in her mind after some innocent gossip from a neighbor. She fought a constant battle with such an assumption. Well was good. Doubts, however, do not require a time to grow. A name that didn't seem familiar to her in his messages. Late night hours. A faint whiff of perfume, definitely not hers. Her heart grew heavy. "Well, we need to talk." "Later, my dear," he replied, brushing past her toward the dining table. "I'm starving." "What's for dinner?" She watched him with anger and pain. How could he be so blind? Funk was drowning in agony, yet Whale was oblivious. The truth was that Adewale loved Funk with all his heart but had grown comfortable. He had assumed she would always stay. He couldn't feel how lonely she was and how badly she needed his attention. And Funk? She really didn't know how to communicate it without sounding desperate. Thus, the silence between them continued to regrow. That night, after Adewale went to bed, Funk sat in the dark living room alone. Her mind was running rampant. What if he was cheating? What if she was not enough? Her heart ached with love and anger and something she did not want to name that was much darker. She needed to plan, to do something, anything to seize control once again. Maybe he needs to learn how it feels, she whispered to herself. Even speaking those words sent shivers down her spine. Waking up in the morning as every other day, Adewale knelt down in their bedroom to pray. "Lord, bless this home. Protect Funk and me. Keep evil far away from us." Funk stood at the door, her heart drawn tight. She should cry, but it would not come. Instead, she said beneath her breath, "Let's see if it will save you this time." He did not mean it, not yet. Yet the thought was there lurking. It was the beginning of something neither of them would ever have imagined. As Adewale grew busier in his life, Funk's worries began to swell. He came home later every night, sometimes smelling of perfumes that definitely didn't belong to her. She told herself it meant nothing. Then, during the next few days, she overheard their neighbor TT gossiping over the fence. "Ah, Funk, your Adewale is such a fine man," TT chuckled elusively. "There was a time I must see him last week at that new restaurant. He was with one pretty young lady. She looked like she knew him well." Funk found her heart racing but still laughed. "Oh TT, you and your stories. Whale probably met up with a client." "Could be so. But be careful now, men like him attract all kinds of temptations." Funk felt the words wash over her like a shower of wet clothes. And as Adewale walked in that evening whistling, her heart began to pound. "You are late again," she said, folding her arms. "Traffic," Adewale replied, giving her a quick peck on the cheek. He stepped back. "Traffic every night?" "Whale, are you sure it is only traffic?" He frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" She hesitated. Should she say it? Should she straight up accuse him? "Nothing," she murmured as she turned away. But there was nothing. That night, as Adewale lay peacefully asleep, Funk went looking through his phone in the living room. She hated doing it, but the urge was just too strong. He didn't lock it, never had. It was a sign of trust, so she thought. Not much, really. Mostly work emails and messages with clients. Then she saw it. A text message from someone named Tio. Thanks for dinner. Really nice hanging with you and hope to see you again soon. Her hands began to shake. She stared at the screen, willing it to change. Who is Tio? She whispered. The following morning, Adewale sensed the coolness in her voice. Funk, are you okay? She nodded stiffly. Fine. You don't look fine. He wanted to scream, to throw the phone at him and demand answers, but did not. Instead, she tightened her lips into a smile. I'm fine. Days turned into weeks as they drifted farther apart. Funk grew quieter, more withdrawn. Adewale, busy with work, hardly seemed to notice. One evening she turned to him and asked, Well, who is Tio? He blinked. He was taken aback. Tio? Where did that come from? She held out the phone to him. This message. Who is she? He let out a long sigh and rubbed his temples. Funk, Tio is a client. I went out to dinner with her because she is investing in my project. Nothing more than that. And you didn't think to tell me that? I just didn't judge it serious enough. Business related. Business. Her voice cracked. So you have dinner in a restaurant with another woman and you call it work? Funk, please stop overreacting. Overreacting? She let out a bitter laugh. Do you not see this? How distant you've grown. How much you've changed. Funk, don't even go there, he tried to say, reaching to hold her hand, but she slipped out of the reach of his hand. Well, I am your wife, not a housekeeper you go home to when you tire. He sat there looking hurt and frustrated. What exactly would you have me say? That I work for us. For our future. I want you to see me, she said softly, tears welling in her eyes. Adewale could not see what to say. He loved his wife but could not fathom the weight of her hurt. That night, Funk lay on her back awake, staring up at the ceiling. The messages from TT, texts from Tio, the overtime, failed to cease echoing through her mind. She felt completely lost. On the next day, Funk did that for which mostly she herself never thought she would do. She sought out Mama Ope, an ancient herbalist said to live under the outskirts of Lagos. Ah, my daughter, came the deep, grainy voice of Mama Ope. What brings you here? Funk hesitated. I need help, Mama. Mama Ope narrowed her eyes. Help with what? My husband, she whispered. I think he is cheating. Mama Ope nodded slowly. Men. They are like leaves in the wind. But I can help you. I have a medicine that can make him stay close to you. Funk's heart was pounding. What's that? The old woman disappeared into a room behind her. After some minutes she came back with a small bottle of dark liquid. Just a few drops into his food. That should bind him to you. Funk looked at the bottle, hands shaking. Is it safe? Mama Ope smiled. Safe enough. You want him to love you or not? She took the bottle in her hands, laden with doubt and desperation. Funk tucked the bottle away in the kitchen out of sight. She told herself she wouldn't use it, but the temptation lingered. Each time Adewale laughed on his phone or worked late, dark thoughts crept in. In the end, this should fix us, she figured. That evening, while cooking, she held the bottle in one hand, heart racing. Just some drops, she whispered. Let him stay with me. But as she turned the cap, she heard Adewale's voice from the living room, praying. Lord, deliver my home. Hold Funk and me in your strength together. She froze and then turned to tears. She capped the bottle again and threw everything into the trash. That very night, while they sat together in silence, Funk heard all her actions speak to her. She never really knew how to make her marriage work, but one thing was absolutely clear. This was not the way. Dinner was ready. Jollof rice was sizzling, mixing with the distant smell of something darker. Funk, in the kitchen, stood staring at the plate she had served for Adewale. She wiped a sweaty palm against her apron. The bottle from Mama Ope laid empty in the trash. A small part of her wanted to dig into the trash and throw the plate away, but the louder part, an angry, demoralized one, did not let her. She carried the tray into the dining room. Oh, Funk, that smells wonderful, Adewale said, smiling from where he had taken his seat. She strained to smile, her heart racing. It is your favorite. Best thing that's ever happened to me, he said, elevating his spoon. Her stomach twisted. She sat directly across the table from him, watching every single thing he did. His prayers had always gotten on her nerves, multitude of things he had to bless coming to the table, but this night she was really counting on them to keep him. Pray, Adewale said, bowing his head. Funk clasped her hands, pressing her knuckles white. A storm raged in her head. What if this doesn't work? What if it works really well? What if he discovers? Lord, we thank you for this meal, Adewale began unflinchingly. Bless our hands in the making of this meal. Keep us safe from all harm, seen and unseen. Center us in love and forgiveness. Her gaze dropped to her plate. Was it her imagination, or had the rice turned darker, heavier? She swallowed and breathed shallowly. Adewale finished the prayer and looked up, smiling. Amen, he said, and picked up his spoon. Funk clenched her fists under the table. Wait, she shouted. Adewale stopped with the spoon inches from his mouth. What's wrong? I just remembered, she said. There's pepper sauce in the kitchen. Let me just get it. She shot up so quickly that her chair rasped against the floor. Funk, sit down, Adewale spoke up, now more calmly but still inserted a note of authority. You have been acting strange all week. What's wrong? Her heart raced. She felt trapped between her guilt and fear. Nothing. I just thought. Funk, talk to me, he said, laying the spoon down. She sat down shakily. It's nothing, Whale. Don't eat. Adewale stared at her for a moment, his brows furrowed. Why so nervous? Did something happen? Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to scream out, open her mouth fully and tell him everything, but felt stupid with her throat. Funk, he said very quietly. Did you do something to this food? Her head shot up. For a moment she found it hard to speak. Why would you say such a thing? She asked, trembling. I don't know, he said as he leaned back in his chair. You're acting like you don't want me to eat it. Should I be worried? She stood up all of a sudden, knocking over her chair. You know what? Don't eat it, she screamed out. Adewale blinked, shocked into silence. What is wrong with you? Funk, talk to me. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I thought you were cheating on me, Whale. I thought I was losing you. He stood up slowly, his face an expression of confusion and hurt. Cheating? Funk, is this what you think of me? She rubbed her eyes with her hands. Back and forth she paced about the room. You're late most of the time. You're always on your phone. And that woman, Tio.